you know about that? Come on live. We're gonna be live. 1, 2, testing, 3, 4. Do you even know what we're talking about tonight?
No.
Talking about revolution. You know what a revolution is?
No.
It's when things need to change, people stand up. They call it a revolution, like the Revolutionary War. When we got away from England, we said no taxation without representation. We did our thing, our country.
Good night.
The people we call our country.
Good night.
Good night, honey.
What just happened? It was like
Everything went live.
Dude.
Hey, say what's up. You're live now. You're live.
Hi.
Come on, man. That's gonna be my co-host. It's a human condition. We're live. And live early. So I'm just gonna be sitting here twiddling my thumbs, waiting for my pod to get on. You guys don't know what the pod's about. There's Lenice. Lenice, always on time. All right, we're live, Lenice, because why not?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to do this watch party thing. People start coming on. How you been? Can you hear me? I said, how you been?
Good. Let me put my earpiece in.
Let me do the watch party. What the crap? Oh well. Be all right. Sophie, what you doing, kiddo?
Sorry.
We got a co-host. This is what happens when we're 7 minutes early. Lenice, what are you eating? Is that bologna?
I was
Yeah.
about to say bologna.
Where do you get bologna from?
Fridge.
Why are you holding out on me? Come on. You want to sit down? You want to get in on this? Do you think we need a revolution? Huh? You don't know? You like the way things are going in this country right now?
No.
What's wrong with what's going on in this country?
Everything.
Well, that's not a good answer. You gotta be specific. What's going on?
Everything.
What don't you like? Specifics. Everything's too broad. We can't do anything with everything. We can do something with something.
Like racism.
Well, nobody likes that. Well, I digress. Some people do like it. And we don't like that either, so we're working on that. Bringing awareness to it, right?
Hmm.
What else? What else is going on here that we need to fix? There's a lot of stuff that's over your head.
Oh, women's rights.
Women's rights.
Yeah.
What do you know about women's rights?
Well, my teacher, she has a bunch of books about it, and it's Women's History Month, so
You're fine, kid.
so
Oh, here's
she has a bunch of books, and she reads it every morning for
Yeah, Dean.
making meeting.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. I like that she's educating you this early. It's the beauty of a Montessori. There's Dean. Hey, Dean, how's it going?
Good, Vince. Nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet you. This is
Who's your
Lenice right
company?
here. This is
Who's
my
that?
co-host for a minute. We came on early, so we said, say hi to Dean.
Hello.
This is Amber's friend.
Hello.
Hey,
How you
Dee.
doing? Hi, Lenice. How are you?
Good.
Hey, you know Ambra, right, Lenice?
No.
Have you been on with her at all? She's the one. She's stuck out in France right now.
Mhm.
Well, this is her friend. She introduced me to Dean,
Oh,
and
okay.
we started talking, and okay, come on, goofball. and we Dean's creating so where I'm passionate about We the People or whatever this winds up morphing into. Dean's creating systems for it, something to the same effect, you know. And like I saw in his writing today, I'm like, well, I lack that, you know. I got the passion. I'll go out and I'll rally some things, but what typically lacks in a movement where there's a lot of passion is a system.
The system.
That's what happened in Tahrir Square. They didn't know they were going to really take it down like that. They took it down. They're like, oh man, we didn't make any demands. What do we do? But yeah, we got Phil on. Phil's on now. We'll start filling up in a second. You're out in California, aren't you, Dean?
Yeah, yeah, I'm in SoCal, specifically like Lake Forest. So
Okay.
yeah, if that helps. I'm not.
Lake Forest, Orange County, right?
Yeah, exactly.
How's it going, Phil? Oh, muted. Muted.
Good, Vince. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. This is Dean. Dean's
Man, how are you?
Good.
Dean, you want to tell a little bit about everyone knows these two and me. You want to tell a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with I don't have a good elevator speech, so we'll start there. Yeah, I guess I just have done a lot of things specifically in the technology realm, and so most of my career is kind of in that vein of technology and digital marketing. And in the mix of that, just caring about humanity and seeing how I can help. And I suppose that's where I start. I'm here to learn more than anything, I think. So
That's really all we need. Like we don't do elevator speeches because those are for Hollywood. We do long form and a little bit about our group is we chop it up. You know, we talk. We have difficult conversations. They're not so difficult for us anymore. We can kind of navigate our way through them, but they're conversations where people wince because you got to feel comfortable around each other to say the types of things that we say. They're just real things. They're not hateful, but there's a lot of trauma that's been stored up over time, and our whole thing is navigating through semantics so we can get to the source. What really is going on? You know, the trauma is the same. It doesn't matter what brought it on. You know, we all have different triggers, but when it comes to the visceral feeling, it's the same. So we try to get through the words and get to the source, and then we can have the conversation without being triggered. That's kind of the gist of us.
makes sense. I mean, yeah, and until you have that trust, how do you really get vulnerable, right? And then how do you make the change if you're not a little bit willing to change? So yeah.
And Dean, you're absolutely right. So it's got to start from someplace, but you know, sometimes it takes one person to say, hey, you know, look, I understand. I've been there, you know, let me tell you something about myself. And then that way, then you can say, you know what, Phil, I can relate to you, you know what I mean? And then that's how we begin to start that process of building a rapport and, you know, and then being able to explore similarities, differences, and how to work through the differences and things of that nature, no matter how far we are away on, how far away we are on the spectrum, you know?
Right. Yeah.
And you know, we're never really that far is the thing you find out. Humans are humans, and our core desires, they're fairly similar. At the end of the day, we all want to be loved. We don't want to feel alienated. Don't want to feel judged, like those things that all make us feel like shit. Now we all have very different ways of going about achieving that. And some of that is highly dysfunctional. But at the end of the day, if we can get to the core of who we are, you know, we might be able to serve each other rather than fight against each other. But that being said, the topic of tonight is revolution. And in human history, it's always been bloody. Revolution is always equated to some kind of bloody battle because humans can't agree. It's always a power struggle. It's never. I don't know if we've ever in the history of human civilization, written anyway. I don't think we've ever come to this great compromise that stood the test of time because it was a real compromise and it wasn't one group overpowered the other and forced them into a compromise. I don't think that's ever happened, not to my knowledge. If it had, then these empires wouldn't keep collapsing. And you know, it seems like we're on the verge of that. Every great empire crumbles. America's having to come to grips with the fact that maybe it wasn't so great in its inception. You know what I mean? Like maybe we did some foul things to get what we needed to get, and now it's time to come to terms with that. And the problem with empires collapsing is that nobody admits it. Like I don't think it's ever been done. We're collectively an empire just comes together and says, yeah, we fucked up. We fucked up and we wanna atone for this. How can we get this right? You know, and I think that's where we are today. I think we have an opportunity because of the internet to maybe do that. To maybe but there's got to be this collective drive towards healing, rather than forcing will down each other's throats. And I don't know if we're equipped. I hope we are. I'll just leave that. And
So Vince, I'll say I believe that we are definitely equipped to talk about revolution and implement revolution at some form through the internet. You know, this is the information age, and I'll say, you know, it wasn't too long ago. Think about it, where you had to contact an operator. If I wanted to call a niece, I would have to call, hey, this is Phil, you know, I'm looking for the niece, you know, and then they would patch me through.
Yeah.
You know, I got my first cell phone. I mean, car phones were a thing in the late 80s, early 90s, around there. You know, I got my cell phone in 99. Now, I mean, it's not a cell phone anymore. This is a walking computer. You know,
Yeah.
I can find out almost anything I want to find out at, you know, right at the tip of my hand within seconds, as long as I got a charge. So the thing is we can get some information out to others and build I don't want to say an army, but build a following of like-minded individuals and just say, hey, you know what? You know, the majority is supposed to rule in voting. Well, we can get the majority of us to feel this kind of way, whether we typically have felt leans left or right, we feel this way and we feel like these changes should be implemented. And guess what? Those changes can be implemented. It can happen, you know, but like you said, it takes us setting aside some small differences and saying this goal here, whatever that goal may be, this goal here is what we should be trying to achieve, and then pushing for it.
Right. I agree with that 100%. You know, I'm big on the we the people thing, you know, because man, that document, if it were implemented in the way that it was written, well, we had it, you know, we the people. It doesn't get much more. It's, you know, like civil rights, I equate it to that. Like, it's so all encompassing. And if that had included everybody, then we'd be a much more evolved society right now. But I think we can take that back to the people, because it's been tarnished by the powers that be. If you take that back and say, look, we the people, but we mean it. Now, we the people doesn't mean we all agree on everything. I might want this agenda. I might want this agenda. And that's okay. That's what a democracy is. But can we all come together and say, we recognize that the one thing that's destroying our ability to communicate with each other like this and have each other's votes count truly is the corporate greed that's in our politics. Like, I think most can look at that and say, if we get them out of there, if we get the money out of politics and bring it back to a servitude of the people, we might be onto something.
Well, I'm just gonna throw stuff out there.
Yeah.
There's a fascinating tension between representing the individual and then the clumping that happens when you define yourself within a group, right?
Mhm.
And if we want to wind back the clock to time and specifically talking about technology, right? The Constitution was a framework, right, to help groups of people who didn't have the ability to communicate, that never got to see each other, that lived in separate states, that oftentimes never left those said states, and to come together and trust one another from Maine to Florida, right? And I mean, that was a reach, right? And you had contention now, and so you accelerate the timeline, right? And you come to today, and you have now the ability to have individual representation, which is clouded by electoral colleges, by the civil servants that we elect, right? And unfortunately, sometimes we elect a very limited set of potential representatives to represent a very broad set of voices and spectrums, right? And then you have the weakness of the individual at that level when they are invited with money and power and control and whatever origin story they may have picked up as well for why they even got into what they're doing. And I like to believe that there's no evil babies, right? We're all born good. It's just sometimes the path we end up going down. So coming to this moment where we can personalize to the individual and still represent the collective is a pretty amazing thing. And I guess that's what I really fundamentally get excited about technologies and system building is how do you have both, right? How do you represent the psychology and the sociology and then bridge it together is a complex topic. But I think just the voices that keep coming up that are calling for that is encouraging. And it just bridging off of what you guys were saying.
Well, it's through technology that I've seen real change in my neighborhood. Not sweeping change, but I've seen some knuckleheads, man. Some people that I never in a million years would have thought I'm having deep conversations about what happened to them as children, and going there with just the conversations we're having. If it weren't for this technology, those conversations, they're not happening. So there's an energy signature that we're putting out here. There's Ambra. How are you? There's an energy signature that we're putting out here that nobody can negate, right? It's happening. So yeah, there's a lot of bad shit that comes through daily, but then there's this, and this, just from a physics standpoint, this seems to collectively stick together. The bond is much stronger than it is with all these passing subatomic particles of bullshit. Excuse my French.
Well, you actually, so you started, sorry, I was taking some notes. So one of the things that I thought was curious, right, is the avoided war isn't recorded. The avoided war isn't published. Mm-hmm. And so all these great wins are kind of understated when you have the drama of violence, the drama of some of these other things. And, that almost helps the polarization versus alleviating that tension. And maybe again, in a technology way, are we encouraging the news channels to elevate the bad over the good? And I guess that's where we all have individual choices, right? Do we support that? And how do we drive our power one way or another?
Well, Dean, we've always, I can't say we, but the media has always put out the negative more so than the positive, because the negative draws more people in. Unfortunately, the majority of the masses like to see the negativity, and and then they love to see what the media wants to portray, and then that ties into racial disparity and many other things that we really have and deal with in this world. So and like you said, the glorification of war and violence, that goes back to the gladiators, where they were put to show, because that got the masses to come together and be able to look at things. So we're wired that way, where we like violence. It does something, like we feel more patriotic because the war is going, because we're at war. We're going out to take out the bad guys. I'm sure I wasn't living there at that time, but the Christians during the Crusades felt they were very much so right for having to go spread the good news through any means necessary. But so you're right. We're dealing with that all the time, and that's just something that is going to continue until we collectively, from a singular frame of mind, decide we want to change that.
Do you think it's because there's no profit in peace?
There's no profit for the people who deal in death in peace. So for the people who create more and more weapons, and for the people who profit off war and stuff like that through other means, they like to keep that stuff going because of the contracts. I mean, Halliburton, even, they were a contractor, was it Desert Storm? And so they had the contract to, if I'm not mistaken, and if I'm wrong, somebody jump on and tell me, but I believe they had the contract to take care of supplying all the trucks and stuff out there when they were trying to rebuild over in the Middle East. And so there was no preventive maintenance done on that truck at all. And when the trucks died, they died, and Halliburton got paid to just replace the truck. And that cost the government plenty of money. But see, the thing is Halliburton, they were like, we don't care about fixing the truck. We just care about getting paid to get your new trucks, And so those are the type of things that people benefit off war. That's not necessarily weapons, anything like that. So there's more money in that. So those people try and keep the negative going. They always try and find the boogeyman, so to speak.
Well, there is no profit in well humans. There's a great profit in humans that are well. We just haven't seen it collectively yet. And that's the thing. And that's that big fight right now is that, so people that have experienced wellness and we come together in groups and we speak like this, we start to understand what that feels like. And we know that the benefit far outweighs, buying guns and putting alarms on our house and like all the other stuff that they want us in fear. The profit's in the fear. If you can, because the government, they didn't create any of this. They just perpetuate it. You know what I mean? They know that there's this deep seated, these root conditions in the human condition, and they exacerbate them, and then they take advantage of them. They capitalize. They don't know any other way to capitalize. That's the thing. And trying to take money, as soon as you start taking, you can do anything you want till you start talking about taking money out of my hand, the greed driven, then it's a problem, so that they've known for a long time what fossil fuels do. They understand that. Cigarettes, they've known, and it's okay, you make the mistake and you put it out there. So once you realize what the truth is, why do you not pull away? Well, they're already ingrained. And that's what we are. We're ingrained in this state of consumerism, and perpetual war. The military industrial complex, that's who owns everything right now. The two parties, that's the corporation, that's the corporatocracy that we need to eliminate by pulling money out of our politics. Yeah, it's the profit. They're scared, they're scared shitless of having nothing. They're stuck in that lack and limitation mindset. So we got to take it from them, like that's the thing. Like we don't have to be violent. Let's take their money. That's our money they have. That's our money. Like, and as soon as people start realizing how much power each individual has, I'm telling you, man, we get to 33 million, we get to 60. And we have these conversations all the time. People will start feeling empowered, and they'll start coming together in these communities of people who look different and live in different places. They'll start coming together and they'll say, damn, they want the same thing I want. And we can work together to make this happen. And that thing I say is bullshit in the government. I don't have to listen to it. I don't have to listen. They work for me. They work for us. We're going to start feeling us collectively. That's the organic process of this whole thing is when it's all said and done, how much government are we actually going to need if we accomplish it?
Vince, let's talk about something that we can relate to. This actually happened. And I don't remember the year, forgive me, but there was a boycott in Birmingham, Alabama, of the bus system. And it was a long process. And it was very tough for the African Americans at that time, who were not able to get to work and things of that nature. But that boycott eventually made some changes because they had to say, you know what, this is a large portion of our money that we were bringing in that is now missing. It's a large piece, and they were and the people at that time, the African Americans at that time in that place in Birmingham were committed to it, and so that made a difference. And so that was one of the first times that truly, in my mind, made the government feel like Martin Luther King was a dangerous person.
Yeah.
Because when you start talking about affecting economics in the long run, that is when changes have to be made. And so now if we can get to a point like you're saying to where we say, okay, America, we feel that the representation that we're supposed to be getting from a national level isn't happening. And so because of that, we're making a decision to keep our money. We're putting it in escrow, so to speak, as if we're a tenant that's not getting our plumbing fixed.
Right.
And then if we hold on to that money and say, it's here and we can give it to you, you know what I mean? But these are some of the things that we want. Now, if you can get, like you said, to that 33 million people who are willing to do that, then yeah, you can expect some changes. That is power, because that's shutting down a lot of things. That's us we can tell the government we're heavy. You know what I mean? Let's start making some changes here. Let's get rid of some of these corporate entities that are really running things that are counterintuitive to the actual people.
And think about the demand we're making. It's not a power flip. It's a demand of equanimity. You know what I mean? Like how harmless is that? I mean, it's only harmless to people that are bad, or harmful to people that are bad. Like
Yeah,
that. the
that's
only
what I was
people-
about to say, Vince. It's very harmful for them. You know, my thing is that, you know, just that example that Phil just gave, you're gonna need the support, and you're gonna, you know, I love the idea of, you know, doing this virtually and non-violently, because we're, you know, we're on social media, and they can look at what we're doing, and so they can't claim we're, you know,
blowing up buildings.
blowing
Yeah.
up buildings or fires or things like that. But just like in that boycott, it's got to be some support, because like, okay, what if they shut down the platform? What if they, you know, shut us down? And certain people have to have the support of, if, you know, they get fired from their job, or
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying? So
Yep.
there's got to be an infrastructure around that. And like you were saying, we got to be in very dense populated areas that we can support one another, because I'm not going to make that sacrifice if I don't know if, you know what I'm saying, if I'm
Supporting.
going to be able to feed my family because
Right.
I'm in this revolution. So we got to be able to address that part of it as well.
Mhm.
You know, I could see them maybe pulling it for a month. So with a month at 33 million, and these are just numbers, they go all over the place, but for a month at 33 million, we take 56 billion out of the coffers of primarily the corporations who won't be able to sustain this. Yes, we're taking from the feds too, but they won't even know that for a good 8 to 12 months that we've not paid those taxes. So to them, they're going to get, it's the corporations that are going to be on their ass like, hey, better pay attention over here. Maybe we're not supposed to be in. Can you go another month with 56 billion taken out of those corporations? When they see we're serious, then they're going to feel it, and they're going to feel it immediately. And we ain't doing nothing. We ain't violent. We're not buying there anymore. We're sick of it. We're done with this shit. But everybody would have to cooperate. And I talked to Dominic, one of my guys. He trying to see if numbers probably. So Dominic said, I'm like, man, I can't figure out what the one thing I'm stuck on is, because we were talking about doing this collectively, making sure we're in populated areas where we can lean on each other. And I'm like, what do we do about the utilities? You know, gas, electric, or not gas, like, well, that was the thing, electric. He's like, well, you know how bad green energy wants to be out here? And then we roll back to guys like Bernie, who's with this. Bernie's with this, Rand Paul. There's people all over the spectrum. What's his name? Mitt Romney. He's with this. We got the People Party brewing right now. There's so many people that are with getting them out of our system. I don't see that. I don't know, but I don't know what it would be. But it would take that. I think we'd have to suffer for a month, and I'll suffer for a month doing anything. I'll stand on my head for a month if it'll change something. If it'll make my kid make his bed every morning. That's just me though. Hey, Alexis. How you doing?
Hello, I'm doing wonderful. I've been having such amazing downloads today, and
Yeah?
action, and the ability to take right action immediately instead of procrastinating and let it fall out of my ear and disappear.
Oh, I need some of that. I need some of that glue, that action glue.
I think they call it Gorilla Glue.
Gorilla
Number
glue.
4
Where can I find it?
at your local dispensary.
Yeah. So Alexis, we're just talking right now. We're talking about we the people, but we're just talking about revolution in general. And
My favorite topic.
yeah, I mean, it's necessary. Can it be nonviolent?
Absolutely.
That's well, there, absolutely. She said it. Show's over. We know now. We know.
I have a
Yeah,
question.
it can be. It can be. I really think it can be. I think we're in this different place, this different time. I go back to you saying the bad guy lost, right? Like, so, but the bad guy could win again. And it's not just him, it's the underbelly, but we're in this, we can connect through this. It's so amazing that they can't go burn books and now we don't have information. They
I
can't
mean,
shut
this
this down.
could just collapse. Don't get it twisted. This could just collapse. So people should be doing their individual work to learn how to think and develop their instincts and develop their ability to synthesize information and make immediate like calm, regulated, clarity-based decisions. Because should this collapse, we all gonna be fucked if everybody panics. But if everybody works on their resilience now, because we've successfully, successfully if you live, navigated a pandemic, then you have the ability to choose how you emerge, and you can be ready. And if you stay ready, you don't got to get ready, and then you don't got to panic, because understanding is what determines if something is a problem.
Mhm. Great, Amber.
Yeah. So when you first brought this up, I took a moment because my first answer to the question is no, it's not possible. That's just what immediately comes up for me. And I took a minute to think on if I really thought that. And the reason that came up to me is because I feel like whatever we have seen as what we think is peace or the opposite of revolution is supported by violence somewhere in the world. Like, we might not be witnessing it, and so we think everything's okay, but there's someone paying for that somewhere. And just because we're oblivious to the violence doesn't mean it's not happening. And so the question with that in mind is, what does the other side of revolution look like if it isn't just another version of what we already have?
Healing and liberation, because yes, we can't immediately eradicate the violence that exists now, but can we have a revolution that does not have additional violence? Yes.
And that's what it has to be.
Violent people, the violent energy that exists is going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, it exists. Acceptance of what is a part of the process. That's just here. But then if you're committed to co-liberation from the systems that cause humanity to operate in scarcity and violence, then what you do is you create systems to eradicate that, and you increase resilience factors so that then future generations will have more resilience factors, and you marginalize the systems that cause violence. And so it's about species evolution instead of individual instantaneous shift.
It can't be. It can't be that one side can't overpower the other. It's not a power flip. It's a elevation in frequency of a collective group that now stands in that truth, where, like you said, we can't deny that there's still going to be this sect of people that still believes in the old way, and they're going to use violence to get what they want. But yeah, I can tell you, yeah.
I was just about to say, I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna go grab a book, because I think this book addresses the topic that what you bringing up, like that trigger of zero sum thinking.
Yeah.
It tells you how it gets in there, and so I just want to show your audience why the book that they should get.
Okay. This goes into the systems you're trying to create, right, Dean? I mean, It sounds really familiar to what you just wrote.
Oh yeah, systems are fundamentally a culmination of processes, and then you underpin a process with a platform, and then you have a participation through people, right? And not to make it ultra simple, but it has to be accessible at some point, right? And I think one of the challenges is that the systems in a lot of ways become over complexified, and people can't, sorry.
My kids burned the house down.
We had to replace our stove, and it's all right. They keep smoking the detector, but anyways, that makes it more fun. So yeah, I guess one of the things that's really challenging, and I guess what you're talking about is actually the avoidance of revolution through evolution, right? And so you evolve the thinking, and then the thinking informs the behavior, and then you start to change behaviors in a way, especially if it's organized, to build communities, right? And I think one of the challenging parts is that we have a very fragmented sense of what a community means. If anything, I'm not sure we have a community in the same ways that we even grew up with. And maybe that's for the best, right? Because our tribes are more ideological than proximity based, right? And I think that is where you have this momentum because of technology, because of enlightenment, because of further education, that people are able to vocalize their point of view in a way that people can at least appreciate. They don't have to adopt it. I think that's the control aspect where you're pushing people that believe what I say, and you're like, yeah, I believe it, but I don't have to behave that way, right? I believe that to be true to you, and that's okay. And that willingness to accept it comes with a vulnerability, and that vulnerability is something that we have been prone to avoid because we've gone through those traumas, and that's you're like I'm like I think that the saying I
This
most
where it
recently
get
said was,
interesting.
yeah, well, it's like it's different pile, same smell. I was like, I feel like I've seen this stuff before, and so there is actually an institutional reluctance lately, right? You're like, I almost don't believe anyone that has too many people in their group because they lost their ability to have a voice, they lost their ability to free think, maybe, you know, and they do empower people to do things on their behalf. And I guess that goes back to the trust, right? And that goes back to community. You have people who play roles. And I think our roles are very confused. I think they don't necessarily synergize to meet an aligned objective. And I don't even know what anyone's objective is other than some sort of peace, right? And that even then is not really clearly defined. So you have very ambiguous cloud, you have of where we want to go, and then you have clustering of like, oh, they represent this without really knowing what they really represent, because you don't have time to know what they really represent. And then you know, the just self-awareness that you're like, I believe they're impacting me. And Vince, I don't mean to criticize you, but you made some broad statements, and those can be dangerous too, right? Corporations. I mean, yes, there are a lot of terrible corporations, and I also want to believe that there's some good ones out there. And I think
They call B Corps, and they're committed to social and equitable change, and they have to meet certain criteria for advancement to be qualified and labeled as a B Corp. And the idea behind doing business with B Corps is that you can be, it's called a B stands for benefit. So you can be spending your dollars with corporations that add benefit to the world. And so you shift the corporate structure to things that add benefit, and then they have to meet these metrics and maintain their benefit status.
Well, and that's, you see that happening with NFT, you know, that there's this new wave of what a corporation will look like, and based on energy signature, really. So the corporations of old gotta go. I mean, the one that we know that. Most people don't know of these conscious organizations that are, they'll know it real soon. NFTs all over the place now, but
well, it's fascinating though, because you actually introduced another system, a system for regulating systems. And I guess like that's kind of what my hope is like, get people to think smarter, get people to build systems smarter, and then have the transparency to know what's really happening, right? I think
see, intelligence is a privilege though too, that sometimes like if a person with intelligence privilege that has not done their internal work will take that as superiority and then start to exert dominance. So you got to be careful and make sure you create systems that prevent these human body emotional occurrences where there's power in authoritative structure too, right? Like, so you got to make sure you add that component to the systems, because when you say like, oh, get people to think smarter, that's great if those bodies can think smarter and those bodies have intelligence privilege, but intelligence is a privilege.
Totally.
Everybody don't have.
But do you believe then that intelligence also comes in multitude of formats, right? You have emotional intelligence, you have community, social intelligence, you have all these different layers that couple it. And I guess that's what I mean by getting smarter.
Yes, it does. But then you also had an opposite of all of those.
True. Yes.
And
right.
those people also deserve quality life and humanity. And
absolutely.
I am a staunch advocate for the mediocre being able to live and be happy too.
Well, that's right. What I like about NFT is, and if I'm reading this right, and it's idealistic right now, but it's fragmented. So there's multiple economies, and it's fragmented based on the end users who really own the system. So it allows, and again, this could get corrupted tomorrow, but the idea, the way I read it, is that it allows people to be communal, which is what we are. So we can walk around in our tribes and be communal, and we can coexist with each other without having to impose our will on one another. It's the same as having a church of another denomination next to you. And you guys still hang out on Sundays after church service is over. You know, it's like that kind of thing. We don't have to all, like Dean was saying, we don't have to all believe in everything everyone else is saying. That's not, we're humans. We all have individual experiences, but we should support people that are trying to do better, trying to be better people in whatever fashion that is, you know, without imposing our will. I think the more fragmented we can be under this I don't know, man, idealistic compassion, right? Compassion, under this driving force of compassion, like this, what do we want? Equanimity. How do we get that? Through compassion. For me, that's fairly simple. It's not, but that's what I want.
But so that's a good segue. And then I'm gonna pause and like fall back a little bit. I've been talking a whole lot since I showed up on the scene. This book, The Sum of Us by Heather McGhee, it says what racism costs everyone and how we could prosper together. I'm not all the way through the book, but the first 4 chapters outline the cost of systemic oppression to all citizens in the system. So that is citizens, no matter what their racialized status is. And then it also outlines specific fear tactics. In earlier, Vince, you were speaking to zero-sum thinking. And what has happened, or at least as outlined by Heather McGhee, and it makes perfect sense and matches a lot of other things that it seems true to me in my like studies and experience in this work, that the fear that gets stoked in people who are racialized as white is that an advancement for the other, whatever, insert whatever the other is, automatically means a loss to me. However, just like I'm always talking about the epigenetic impact of history on people who are racialized as Black, the epigenetic impact of that on people who are racialized as white, who may have seen vicarious trauma or something like that, is that fear of zero-sum thinking has lineage behind it. So the intensity of it is a trigger that they were born with that requires somatic healing also. And then the same, but a different type of impact in the bodies of people who are racialized as Black, who experience the actual violence of history and the fears that get stoked in these instances where we're having division and stuff like that. So both and all other sets of bodies in their racialized categories have epigenetic places and fears and triggers that are in them that trigger zero-sum thinking, but people who have been marginalized, and in the book it talks about Black people specifically, do not see an advancement for them as a take from people who are racialized as white or white dominant culture, because they see the status that white dominant culture holds in this society where it's a racial hierarchy. So if that's the case, then the healing that needs to happen, or the fear that needs to be soothed in order for us to have evolution instead of revolution, is that zero-sum thinking. That's the thing that needs to be consistently eradicated in all applications of society and business and in personally, because if it's win or lose, the winners and losers are both on the world. How do we make it better for all of them? And doing that and soothing that fear would soothe a lot of those epigenetic triggers that takes people offline in the bodies that they so jumped into in this position in time. So if we do things that are trauma soothing, Vince, which I know you're on board with, and we set up a society that recognizes that, hell, we could just even use the pandemic as a fallback, that this was a collective trauma globally. Why don't we orient things to heal from collective trauma? And inside that, everybody who does any kind of work on trauma and ancestral healing and all of that, all hands on deck. Whatever way you attack this problem, start healing those epigenetic instructions in the bodies of that are here. And through that, we can eradicate the physical impact. Now that has nothing to do with monetary equity that needs to happen, but without eradicating that physical impact, it's going to be real hard to get that monetary equity over the table, unless individuals do it person to person. And I'm working ideas for that, but that's more to come later. Now that's what I got to say. I'm gonna fall back.
So in doing that though, Alexis, that's still that like, even if like you said, everyone who does all those things, that's still okay, I'm going to help this person, I'm going to help this person heal and get themselves together, but it's still going to trickle down. So it's not just a quick thing that can happen. It's something, right? It's something that could literally take a full generation to happen. And so that's great, and we definitely need to be in it. But how do you all think there's a way where we can affect a quicker change, where we can have the long-term slow game as well as a quick hitter, so to speak, to kind of offset both? Have you considered that?
I have. I had, and it's we the people. Like we got a window right here where everybody knows shit's off. We know everybody knows it's off. Who we had to, the system is dead. It doesn't represent the people anymore. We got an opportunity to come together collectively through this thing virtually, and nobody can call us violent. Nobody, and in that coming together, in just the action of that coming together, we say let's get to 33 million and make the demand. I have to believe that before we even get there, there's going to be this rush of collective energy, just by people taking the leap into maybe, well, this might be the way. You know what I mean? Like, people are so afraid to even say, well, that could be the right way. I don't know if this is the right way. I just know there's a way, and nobody's doing anything really collectively to get there. Or we're kind of just stuck, Phil. We're all asking the question about, we're just not taking it outside of where we're asking the question in a big way. And we can't be the only ones having these conversations. How do we link all of the people that are having these conversations, I guess is the thing, because it's this energy that needs to be out there front and center.
So Vince, I realized, I'm sorry, Alexis, I saw you put your hand up. I realized, and I wasn't in a way trying to toss you a softball, because I knew you would knock it out the park with that answer. Now, when people hear this, because when I listen to you, we've had several conversations about it. So I have more of a thorough understanding of exactly where you're going from it. But when we try and get this talk out, when we try and get people on board with it, we have to have some specific steps. You know what I mean? Like, our goals need to be SMART. And when I say SMART, I'm talking specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. So that the average person who's listening to this says, you know what? Okay, I see Vince's goal. He's saying 33 million people equates to $60 billion. And that's $60 billion we're taking out of, these particular corporations and the federal government, just so that we can exert our collective will to say, hey, this is what needs to happen, and we have this amount of time to do it. So when we can start putting together some steps like that, and I know you have those steps, but I mean, even someone listening to this on Facebook might say, that sounds like a good idea, but I need to know more. I need to know more. So we've got to be able to say, you know what, you got to say it, Vince, because you are leading this right now, and say, hey, this website is, I'm going to get this website together. We're going to put all the information on there. But in the meantime, these are the things that we want to hit. These are the things we want to hit, so that people have a good idea exactly where you're coming from, so they can get excited about doing this, because that's how it's going to share. It's going to be shared word of mouth, and say, you know what, you really need to get in on this. We're trying to make this change. Take a look at this video here, see what you think. So
the beauty of it is that, it's a national ticker, and this national ticker is our show of power. It's our show of power. And I know, Alexis, you had a problem with the equation of the dollar amount, but it's all the same. Every human to the feds and the corporations is worth X amount of dollars. But
it's because of my work as an anti-Black racism educator,
right,
that I have, like, so it's very much top of mind, and I'm actively ridding my body of the effects, but that mean they on the surface for the trigger. So, like, it is not the same story of being a dollar amount for people who are racialized as Black as it is for and people who are of indigenous population as it is for other populations. So that's the reason it gives me just a little. I understand that's not your intent.
I understand where you're coming from.
Why it make me be like,
yeah. No, I got you. So really, that's the thing, is it doesn't take anything other than a commitment, because you're not really committing anything other than if they say no to this demand that I believe in, because I can see how it's the greed that has it dominates our lives. It's the greed. There's a reason the medical industry is the way it is. There's a reason that money goes to corporations for bailouts and people are dying on the streets. There's a reason for that, and it's greed. So if people can agree that, yeah, no, we need that out of our system, so our votes matter and our voices matter, and it's not going to be conglomerates. I can go start a movement and be heard. All I have to do is commit to this movement, and they're really not doing anything at that point other than adding their name to the ticker for real. They're giving us value. We're having our meetings like this under their nose. We're not out in the streets. We're not picketing. We're nowhere where they can see us other than right here. And we're not bombing anything. We're not causing any violence. They can never spin the narrative on us. So what we're doing is we're building this groundswell, letting them watch that ticker build, that ticker build, that ticker build. By the time we get to 33 million, they should know exactly what we're going to take from them. You know, we stop it immediately. Immediately, we get to 33 million. I don't know how long that takes. You know, it could go viral. I don't think it will. But in that work, that collective work, we're going to build something. We're going to build something, and maybe we don't get to 33 million, and we still build something. You know, and we got something for their ass next election. You know what I mean? So it could be that too. But we need a collective movement of eliminating the greed. Let's bring it. I don't have a problem with government if they're there for us. I don't have a problem if they're going to listen to us. I have a problem with
you start a movement that like advocates for generosity. If you want to eliminate greed,
people do it all the time. I mean, I got my little nonprofit. You know, but what's that going to do on the grand scale of life?
If you make generosity popular, and that be a focus of making that popular, then you steer the influence, and with influence comes units of attention. And metaphysically, you know the value of units of attention. Where attention flows, energy goes.
Right.
And so if greed is what you want to stop, drawing attention to greed seems counterintuitive metaphysically, but drawing and amplifying generosity seems to further and be in alignment with your intended goal.
There's an energy signature that far outweighs that right now, and we need to pull that out. We need to pull it out because it overpowers us, and it has for as long as my life. I don't know what happened before me, but there's been this greed structure that, look, it's been written human history. What do people died for? You know, it's just there. It's innate in the human condition. So I think to stand against what we know is already there, because it is guiding our lives. We can't say that it's not. It's what's got us fighting against each other. It's what plays the race card, the sex card. That's that thing. So if we stand against it or opposed to that, we're not going to feed it anymore. I think that is a show of generosity and collective empowerment. Like, we need to stand together empowered and say we're done. And it's not violent that we're saying we're done. We're just not buying. We don't have to buy into your system anymore. We'll keep this money over here, and we'll get the hell out of it. I don't know what. I don't think it comes to that, because when
I got an idea that
Yeah.
could really make it for social impact, and you already can see my smirk. So just like be prepared for something slightly, well, it ain't ridiculous to me. But so what about combining your motives and my motives, in that you get you make your movement and you get everybody withhold their tax dollars. And then we do something like they do in landlord tenant court, where if you pay, like if you get something fixed, you get to deduct it out of your rent and put a receipt in your rent, as long as you gave written notice. So then y'all take those tax dollars and then you put them into a person-to-person reparation fund, where we have equity assessments, and we distribute those tax dollars to create the social impact. So it would be taking the power from the government and ridding some, atoning for some racial historical disparities, adding solutions and healing, and creating impact for generational wealth building for the future where there's disparity now. And then that way, you know, it gives purpose, it gives generous purpose. And so like, then it's the total picture where it amplifies the, hey, greed is the problem. And we want you to be aware that greed is the problem. Now, since you got your dollars and you have power over your dollars, they don't have power over you. Let's just take it and put it for this good anti-Black racism cause and solve a societal ill at the same damn time. And we ain't got to get the government involved. And that way, people who believe that this is a problem can put their money where their mouth is and put up or shut up.
Well, we already
Don't
talked
shut
about
up.
the escrow
Silence is
account.
violence. Don't shut up. Silence is violence.
We already talked about the escrow account, so it's not too far fetched. And I was going to say earlier that there is a way for us to actually have both wins, where we're not talking about greed so much as we're talking about generosity, and still have that same thing be achieved. So, Vince, if you're saying, you know what, everybody withhold your money, and this was even before, Alexis, your idea, which I think is a good idea.
I inspired the escrow account too, just so you know.
You said what?
I was the inspiration for the escrow account too, so just so you know. By the way, if y'all want consulting, this is what I do. www.askalexis111.com. That's www.askalexis111.com. Individual solutions for your place and a shared future.
I need to get graphics. I need a producer to pop some stuff up. Everybody get their thing in.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, Vince. Now you start getting some individual advertising going. You know, it's how you get some more dollars to go towards that as well. So anyway, what I was saying is Vince, you could still have everyone say, look, we're going to withhold our money. We're going to withhold our money, and we're going to put it into an escrow account of some kind, or, you know, whatever. But it's just the message that you give. You know, when you say we've got to stop all this greed that's coming from the corporations, the message can just be different. You can just be saying, you know what, these corporations have controlled and held the laws and things like that to benefit them. Well, it's time that we, the people, decide that the laws should be benefiting and be beneficial to us and how we look at things. And when you frame it in that way, it gives more of a positive light, because you're saying, yes, we're saying, let's change these laws. Let's get the government to change these laws to benefit us, to benefit you, the people who, you know, are suffering behind this, as opposed to saying, you know, we're taking away from the corporations. Because when you do that,
I got that. Yeah.
You've got a lot of people who, you know, work for these corporations, and they feel like, oh, well, you know, if you take away from this employer, and I'm not going to say any potential names, but, you know, if you take away from this employer, it's going to directly affect my bonus check, you know, and so on and so on. And so
that's true.
So we just have to, it's the picture you paint, you know what I mean? As you can see behind Alexis Douglas there, she paints those pictures. You know what I'm saying? She's an artist, an artiste. What I'll say is, you know, if you give me some paint and the canvas, it ain't gonna look that good. You know what I mean? But I still put paint on that picture. So it's about how you present it, you know?
Yeah. No, and she's brought that to my attention several times. You know, I'm like, I'm going in and I'm not trying to rally the people who like that pretty picture. Like, I'm just saying, I'm just putting it all out there. Like, but you're right. It's all in how you frame it, and it can be framed much softer once you get the collective people that believe in it, and they're going to start putting the systems in place, and we start gravitating in that direction. Really only takes a website right now to kind of gauge what the attention level is, and you know, it's really nothing investment to at least kind of test the waters and see where people are. And yeah, I don't know that I'm the best painter for that picture, because I still got a little bit of militant in me, you know, but you know, militant where, oh, I'll die for my, I don't have to say that shit, you know, like
hey, Vince, don't be so hard on yourself. Some women find that incredibly hot, okay?
I'll keep.
You ain't got to be perfect, just perfect for someone.
I'll keep that.
Hey, Vince, you can be Rembrandt.
Yeah.
Listen, all you got the vision. Hire somebody to talk about it. You ain't got to do the talking.
What are we doing here?
I'm just saying, yeah.
Vince said, I brought you all together to talk about it. All right, you're hired.
You know, there's a reason this group's together, and there's a reason, the reason we wound up together. There's a reason we you know, we can do a lot of things because we're speaking a language that people understand. Maybe not on the surface in the way we're speaking it, but they feel it. They feel it, and I'm watching it happen in the neighborhood that I came from, and that's not something I ever thought. That's a hope that I had, you know, that maybe being out there like that might I might see a shift in some of these hard-nosed fucking even racist people.
So this
And
the thing
and I'm
about
seeing it.
this the thing about collective trauma though, Vince. See, collective trauma creates hypervigilance, right?
Mhm.
And different
I know.
types of human bodies develop different types of hypervigilance based on their trauma. So this whole situation that we've been in for the last year and all the things that's highlighted and people being in stuff being stoked, people's hypervigilance turning on. And when hypervigilance is on, what are they? Skeptical of everything.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, wait a minute, they could see. So like people who used to people lying and being deceptive have that discerning eye. And if they've been doing their work, they could see which way they want to align with. People who have that fear of zero-sum thinking being stoked, they not online and they align it with the satisfaction or what they feel like is the solution of that fear, because control of the fear is the way that they used to dealing with it. So that's why the softer approach, this more soothing approach, that triggering that fear is less likely to happen, though it still will happen, because you got the intersection of those two is the hypervigilant one who also is aware of the soothing technique and feel like that's manipulation, right? Like, so it's a spectrum of everything. But if you soothe them and you have right logic, you can get both of them.
Yeah.
Well, I think this is, again, that tension point of trying to impact a community versus talking to an individual, right? You got to meet the individual where they're at. And sometimes that is skepticism. Sometimes that is just altruism. That you just meet them where they're at and go, where are we going? I think one of the hard things is there's no community compass rose, right? Like, I don't know, even like in an incremental improvement, I don't know how we're improving. Are we making traction? Are we heading in the right direction? And are we moving forward? And I think you started talking about that with SMART objectives, right? In order to start making real progress, we actually have to have a clear objective that everyone can rally behind and practically participate, right? And I think sometimes that's also a little bit of the challenge for the getting masses in motion, right? It's like, where do I fall in? I align to the vision. I see where you're going. I don't know how to help. And I say that for myself. I just like, I got skills. I'm just gonna keep learning and I can share my perspective. Yeah, exactly. That's it.
I also available for individual consultation, Dean.
Where's up? All right.
I saw where you fit in immediately. As soon as Amber told me about what you were doing, I was like, oh, yeah, I like systems. I like systems. I got passion. And I can see the path clearly. I don't know how to build
That's
those
a
steps.
particular type of hypervigilance too, just so you know.
What's
It
that?
has the superpower effect. But the fact so everybody, sometimes people be online, they can't see the path clearly because the way they hypervigilance set up and make them go hazy and they maybe spin or freeze or something.
I've gone
So
through
being
that
able
too.
to see the path clearly is hypervigilance. It's an effect of trauma, but it also is probably trauma combined with that intelligence privilege.
And also that's, Vince, that's why you partner with a team that has, different attributes where you can all come together and form like Voltron. It's one of my favorite sayings, form like Voltron and go out and fight the good fight. You have the, what I'm direct. I'm going to say what I need to say. I want to rally the people. We're going to get it going. You have that, and you may not have some of the other attributes needed to fully organize and get everything together. But if you partner with the right people,
Yeah.
and then we all say, okay, let's all approach this situation, with our superpowers, as Alexis said, and then now we find that boom, are this potentially 20 people that we have here that's hitting this problem from all different angles. Now just went to 100 people because we all talked to several different people coming from these different angles and then gave them the whole point of view. Now that 100 people, if you do it 20-fold, turns into 2,000, you know, and then so on and so on. And then it builds and builds and builds.
And we do it by empowering, letting each person know that they are their superpower. That's the thing. You empower them. Look, they don't own you. You own them. You got to, you know, speaking from very three-dimensional terms, you own them. They don't own it. So let's collectively put our power together. We're more powerful.
The person who has control of the influence is the one with the real ownership.
And they've had us scared for so long, scared to step out, scared you might lose that job. And those are very real fears. And I'm not bypassing any of that.
Well,
But
that's reason not to be Republican, because our whole system is skewed Republican. And it is so, like, notice that correlation there. And if you are tired of being afraid and the system has and is skewed toward Republican and oppressive policies, being less afraid, if you are healing us would soothe your fears of us. And healing y'all would soothe our fears of y'all, and y'all sharing the wealth would prove that you really got some skin in the game and you don't want to just be like, oh, I'm going to stop being a bad person. Who cares about the implications of the historical impact on your lived experience today? Just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, even though you're a horribly traumatized individual, which means you also have the correlating superpowers to go with those traumas. So why don't we just, as a society, help unlock those superpowers?
That's where, and it all goes back to trauma. It goes back to the trauma work and where Dean talks about meeting each other. Well, we're all in this field of trauma. We can all relate to that. I might not know what your experience is or your experience is, but there's a point where we can talk about a trigger that makes us feel a certain way. We feel alienated. We feel like we always have to look over our shoulders. We all get there by various means. We know what the trauma feels like. And if that can be the conversation, we can have the conversations about what individual experiences are because we're not threatened by them. You know, so we got it. I think that's a very important common ground that we have, is that we've all been traumatized by this system. You know what I mean? We haven't got it right as humans, and we can admit that. So let's step into the shadow work and let's do that. And let's at least there's some common ground where we can start to break down the triggers.
And let's be clear too, because for anyone that's telling someone else to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, can we make sure that they have a good pair of boots? You know what I mean? You know, let's do that. Let's start there, because if you're telling me to pull myself up by my bootstraps, it's hard to do if I don't have any shoestrings for those boots. And if the boots,
them and their family need boots, right? Like, we gotta remember that.
yes. Yeah. I mean, I'm speaking.
I just wanted to add to it. I was championing.
Okay, no problem. I was just saying it's tough for me to, you know, tighten up my boots and go to work and all that stuff if my boots don't have a sole to them and they're barking like a dog and my toes are hanging out. You know, it's not the same thing if I had a good pair and then I can go to work. You know, so equating that to something else, you know, yeah, it's tough to change my situation if I don't have a decent education of some kind. And I'm not saying you have to have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree, but you have to be educated some way in order to be able to, you know, pull yourself up and make a better way for you and your family. Sorry, I got something in my eye.
That's
think
what
there's
I was
something
going to chime in. Phil, you hit it right on the head. You know, coming from my angle, you know, you got to have that financial education because, you know, as we're going in this movement, you know, and a revolution, people don't have the basic knowledge of financial principles to even know how to leverage what they have, or either to, you know, we talked about the bootstraps and all of that. Some of us don't have bootstraps, and the bootstraps we got, we don't know what to do with them. So, you know, it's got to be that education, and even civic education. Nowadays, people don't even know, and I'm raising my hand, don't know basic civics and how the laws are brought about and those type of things. And so you also have got to have a base level of education for everybody involved, because if we go in with just our passion, you know, we go in with just our passion, but don't have that education to back us up, people are going to be not only by their trauma, but they're going to be scared in that way too, because they don't know what to do. You know what I'm saying? They don't know what to do. And
Poverty is trauma too.
yeah, exactly. It is poverty, financial literacy, having a bad credit score, all of those things hold you back from, being fully committed, and not be fearful. You talking about don't pay my taxes, or, let's go on this revolution, but I'm barely making it, or I don't even, you know what I'm saying? I don't even know about having those proper protections. I don't have an emergency fund. I don't, you know what I'm saying? So that's got to be a big piece of it, because even the haves, got to know that, sharing the wealth is not going to take away from them, but it's going to give more money to them, because really the taxpayers in the middle class is paying for the poor and the rich. We're paying more for everything, right? We're like in the middle. And so we don't get the government programs, but we also are not the wealthy and get the tax write-offs. So we're in the middle paying for everybody else, so that has to be a very big piece of that, because I think it's more of us in the middle than on the outlying, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then
That made a
in
whole
the
lot
middle
of
is the target.
Yeah, I wanted to yell out preach, Denise, but I didn't want to interrupt what you were saying,
But I
because
think there's something in what you said about bootstraps, Phil. There's a movement there. There's some kind of philanthropic movement that addresses bootstraps, giving
There's
people
a whole
bootstraps.
bunch of stuff. All we got to do is align our goals together. So what we want to change, no one organization or no one approach to it is going to change it by itself. So it's all hands on deck, skills-based leadership, inclusivity and belonging, everybody against systemic oppression, everybody in a co-liberation, everybody creating equity, and equity is different than equality, and without equity, there can be no equality. So like everybody doing this together, and if we have the right intention and be mindful and considerate to look for and adjust and course correct with impact, we can make real change happen way faster than doing the nothing that people just kind of want to do because it's hard. And as I heard my brother say to his son and felt inspiration when he said it, he looked at his son when his son said something was hard. He said, hey, it's hard, but you could do it, right? And his son sucked it up and said yes. So it's hard, but we could have a shared future. The only way we're going to get a shared future is to do it right now. We have to start now with that intention and figure it out and be willing to get it right and not have to be right. And is shared future or bust for me? And I keep repeating that because I want it to be shared future or bust for you. That's my movement.
Be shared future or bust for everybody. And you can do it in something like this where you can have Republicans, Democrats, you can have all these different people that are we the people and still say greed needs to go. We don't have to, and we just want to, we want our votes to count when this is all said and done. If we want a third party in and the people vote for it, we want it to be able to happen. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have to agree politically in this. We just need to agree on one thing. Greed has stifled our ability to grow. That's it. We can have people from different movements. We're going to need them. You know, if we want 33 million, we're going to need people who think differently and who have different agendas when we get out of this, but they want their vote to count.
So when you talk this way, there's going to be a certain sect of the people who are going to say, well, this is communism. And because there's a gentleman that I used to work with that, you talk anything like this, we're saying, hey, let's make it better for everyone. Oh, everyone needs to work their way up and do this, do that. But a lot of times the people who feel that way they're poor, just like the vast majority of the rest of us, lower middle class. And so they don't quite understand what we're saying. We're saying that let's build it all up for us all to do better and not just, help out what they feel help out Black people or help out, you know, minorities. No, we're talking about equity, you know, for everyone. Now, yes, you know, Black people are very much so disproportionately poor in comparison to white people, but still, you know, what I mean, we're talking about something that's going to benefit everyone in the whole. And I think, and that's the message that needs to be. See, Lanice, take care. That's the message that needs to be given to anyone who says, "Oh no, we can't do that." No, we're talking about raising the bar for everyone, because there's no reason why we all couldn't be on a higher plane, a higher level. And maybe that's what we need to do to really truly evolve, like you're talking about, as opposed to the revolution, the evolution.
I was talking to Amber the other night, and I really didn't. So there's not a purely socialist country on the planet, but there's countries that implement socialism. And she part-time lives in one of them. And I've never really put into perspective what daily life in France might be. You know, in hearing some of the things that she had to say, that shed some light on what you're talking about and why people might be afraid of that. But this isn't that. We're not talking about social programs. We're talking about collectively coming together to have this be a nation for the people, by the people. Like, it's a different thing. But I can see how somebody who's scared might misconstrue that and try to call it something that it's not, you know?
I think that, but if you were to align yourself with some beneficial goal for the funds, you would be able to get a group of people who are like value to commit to directing those dollars somewhere. And they would be more vested than just saying, oh, I'm going to stick it to the system that's sticking it to me, because people ain't got the chops to fight their fears. So if you give them something to like be noble about, though, one thing that's programmed in the fabric of society is nobility. So if you get people to attune to the feeling of nobility, then like they're doing something and it has a higher purpose. And it does have, those things are true. They're right when they feel that way with your cause. And you got to be right when you feel that way with your cause in order to communicate that. But aligning those dollars, and then here's the thing, that also gives a message that I hear the message differently to the government. So how I heard it the first time you presented it to me was, oh, you're trying to strong arm the government, and I don't want any group being able to just show up and bully my government because I'm vulnerable to my government's vulnerabilities. And that's all like, no. And so that was my resistance. But then you change your approach and you're like, no, it's a passive movement and it's all, you know, well, you had that as an approach, but then you said we'll start by making a demand and we'll show the stance of our power and making the demand. But I think if you say to them like, hey, we the people value this cause, so much so we're going to withhold our dollars from you and put them and give that power and direct it as we the people to where we want to go. So we'll just eliminate the middleman.
Yeah.
Then that forces the middleman to have to think differently in order to stay relevant. So it becomes a cooperation instead of an adversarial event. It's like an offer you can't refuse, but with love and kindness.
Amber, eliminate the middleman. How's that keep coming back up?
Yeah.
And go ahead. Go ahead, Amber.
Thank you. I was just going to say something earlier, which connects to what you said very early on, Alexis, which is I'm very much always thinking about the average person and everyone below the average person, basically in terms of wealth and opportunity and what they might be thinking and what they have been thinking and being fed through the media and where they're at now in terms of fear and lack. And I think that anything around this movement or this if you want to call it a movement, but it's more than that. It's something very specific, right? With a very specific intention, a specific goal. It sounds to me, if I put myself in the place of that person, just like more uncertainty that I don't know if I can handle. And more uncertainty is scarier than the uncertainty I already have for most people. Like if you haven't built up that resilience to realize, well, a certain shades of uncertainty are better than other shades of uncertainty. You're just in fight or flight mode. You're just scared, and you're willing to believe whoever's going to make you feel a little bit better today.
Mhm.
And I think that communication around all those things is super important, meeting people where they're at, but also bringing them along to understand that, okay, sure, maybe based off of the way, Vince, you've brought it up, there is some risk potentially for certain people may be involved, but really that it's a passive, benign movement if it goes a certain way. But what if it goes another way? There's plenty of people that are going to create that story too, and create lots of fear around that. It's just because you're not telling that story right now at the beginning or not choosing to see it, doesn't mean that multiple narratives aren't going to be born of the movement while it's in process.
And if you align with a noble cause, you lessen the power of the risk, because then it's like the government has to say, although you put your money towards good, noble action that you would qualify to get like a charitable discount for anyway, we have to jail you for tax evasion or something just to like prove our point. And then that's where the strong arm tactics come in. That's, I got like, that's when that's appropriate. That's when you'll get, at least that's when, to me, it's like, I could be on that side, but it's got to have more, what I'm saying? Like the injustice of being, I would have to see a solution be created, an avenue happen, and then people be punished for doing the right thing for me to be like, hold on, that's some fuck shit.
Yeah.
And I won't stand for that. And then my nobility trigger will step in, and then it'll be, what I'm saying? Like, so then that's when in my mind, that was my place of agreement. So that's more marketing research when you're talking to people, because someone like me, that could be a trigger point for they to agree. Is once it's like, all right, so if people done stood together and did the right thing and then did some good with their collective action, and the government still posed them, now the government really is the enemy. And I will rise to action against that, because then I do want my government to fail if it's an enemy to me.
Yeah.
I want those oppressive systems to fail. I'll say that. That's true, because those oppressive systems literally are an enemy to me.
And so a lot of those, I can't say like, there's plenty of those systems that reside within the government, and government officials still put those systems in place that like redlining. There's a lot of things that affect poor people, people of color, and other all of that. Amber, you brought up something. You talked about how someone that doesn't feel comfortable or hasn't worked through and not being able to see different shades of gray that might be better than the shades of gray they're seeing. And like you said, so anybody who makes them feel better that day, I mean, you've literally just described the last 4 years, prior to January, where people were like, I am so tired of this system, anyone who can tell me something different, and there'll be a lemming and walk off the cliff with them. Yeah. And we've seen kind of that kind of just happened, where they say, what, something's wrong. And we believe everything that you can look up, like you can look it up truly on the internet. And I don't believe everything I read on the internet, but you can look it up on the internet and see that it's a lie, so they just felt good. They felt soothed at that time. So it's up to someone else now to say, hey, you know what? And it can be not necessarily just you, Vince. It can be, a group that says, hey, this is the new thing. Like you said, Alexis, let's do good for humanity.
Present the right thing.
Present the right thing. Like these are the programs that we want to put in place. Yes, we are going to distribute some funds towards helping out some people and getting some things equitable. But we're not just going to. This is not just considered just a reparations. We're going to make sure that people get educated so that they know what to do with that money. Because if you give somebody some money, I could put $500,000. Well, I can't, because I'm not rich like that. But someone could put $500,000 in someone else's hands. And if they don't have the education or know what to do with it, that $500,000 will be gone in a matter of, in a short relative period of time. So it's about educating people so that they then know how to take, because even if they're educated and they still don't have that, $200,000 salary base in their family, but they're educated a little bit better, they know how to handle things a little bit differently, and they know how to build to the point where it can get there, and they teach their children differently. And then the next generation will be that much better for it.
Yeah.
Philip, I think that also harkens back to what you originally said, and this is something I feel very strongly about. And we talk about fear and scarcity in more spiritual terms, I know, Alexis, but like also that's a very real thing, which you also know. But how do you speak to someone who, especially when you're using very broad terms like corporations, who has a job and has a family, and just, I'll make a joke that Dean will get, they just go to work and make yogurt, and that's all they do every single day of their life. And they may not be living the high life, but they're living a life that's predictable. And, whatever that means, maybe they buy one pair of shoes for their kids every year, for school, if they're lucky, and they can predict that. And they think that they should be able to get more in life, but at least they know what they have. And if they start toying around with taxes and shit that they don't understand, and how to even withhold taxes from their paycheck, which they never usually actually touch, like things like that are a big deal for people. Like you said, civic education, all of that too. I think Lenny's brought that up.
One way to speak to that is, number one, I was there. I was poor for poor people standards, and just dirt poor, digging out of drop boxes for school clothes. So it's a real simple conversation. It's not real simple. Nothing's real simple. It's all complex, and everything's in gray area because that's where humans exist. But you ask people, are you happy? Are you happy? Do you think with what we have going on right now that you're going to get the life that you want for your child? Or, you know what I mean? Do you think
that's a real simple question. But if somebody does not know how to check in with their feelings, they're going to give you the same answer as people give, like the equivalent.
I did cover story.
People say, like, well, how you doing? Fine, and you? That nobody is checking in to see how they feel when they answer that question. Are you happy? I guess so. And then they keep it moving because they got things to do. So
but we're talking about trauma work, right? We're talking about
you got to get
going
people
deeper
on board for trauma work, and people who've been traumatized also have their world dictated to them in a way that you have to shift.
I see what you're
There's
saying.
a ton of identity associated with those types of shifts, and it is not something as simple as asking just one that like.
Well, they're not getting into this thing.
But what you can do in a situation like that, so I campaigned with people, and I had to talk to a lot of constituents about issues that like that they didn't care about, to get them to care about them in order to try to get them to vote for my candidate. In that case, the tactic that I would use would be to appeal to their hopes for their child's stability. And then I would stoke their fears of or show them how fragile the stability that they're grappling is, and how they would be a bad parent if they didn't provide more stability for their child.
Yes,
their stability is already so fragile, and the ability to withstand the hardship is a difference maker. And if they don't provide the ability for their lineage to withstand a hardship, it's a dereliction of their duties to their lineage.
I mean, that's real political, but I can see how that would work.
Oh no, you don't say it like so. I wouldn't say it like that to the person.
No, I don't think you say it like that to the person.
In their language, and it's like, wait a minute, but hold on, you care about your kids, right?
Yeah.
Let me tell you how this policy is. Like, if this happened, your kids won't have the same level of stability that you have, because you know how you told me you like going to work every day and making yogurt. Well, did you know that if you had an increased minimum wage, if the minimum wage was raised to $15 an hour, you wouldn't have to work that second shift, and you might have some time at home with your family, and you'll be less stressed, which, you know what I'm saying, which would improve the quality of your relationships. Oh, maybe you could start that garden. And did you know if you started that garden, you would increase healthy habits and be able to like soothe stress and do all. So you sell the lifestyle benefits of.
Well, you present the package, like you said. You present the package. Here's videos. Here's what this looks like. And then plays into that. Like, this is what it looks like. And then people can make it a choice. That doesn't look like my life. You know what I mean? Like then they're not really under pressure at that point. You don't have to ask them, and they don't have to get defensive and say, I'm good. Because that's what I would do. I'm good. I was always good. I was fucking horrible. I was always good though. and I would make you believe that.
People who live in places where it's like that, I'm good because I'm just surviving, I'm staying alive, they often suffer from environmental injustice too. And environmental injustice has health implications. So one of the districts that I was campaigning in has a big corporation that pumps toxins into the immediate air surroundings. But those toxins in the air have a weight that makes them fall in their immediate surroundings. So the community surrounding the polluting corporations have higher rates of asthma. And in this particular community in Detroit in District 6, if they plant in there, they can't garden and eat the food because it'll make them sick. Now, here's the thing. There's a certain type of mushroom and a certain type of hemp that if they grow those in those lawns, in those neighborhoods, it will remediate the soil within 3 to 5 years. And there are different greening barriers that can happen around this corporation that would absorb some of those toxins, and it would improve the air quality. And so if it's asthma and the impact of asthma on somebody's lived experience is something you could tap into and be like, well, you know how you and your cousin, everybody got asthma? That's not just because it's your family trait. That's because it's your community injustice happening to you based on this. That's why the air tastes brown over here. And that's why people, you know what I'm saying? But the communities, they have their cohesiveness. Them people that live over there stay over there because of that cohesiveness, not realizing that they are consistently being lower life expectancy, their quality of life is being diminished, and an asthma attack in a fragile job with a hospital stay costs you your job, which then sends you spiraling down into poverty. And so that's another way that the community is able to send people in, that the corporation that is polluting through environmental injustice is able to send people into lower lived experiences without consideration for the impact on those lives. It'd just be a tax or a tariff that they pay. But if you made them actually pay for the remediation efforts instead of just paying a fine, so like they had to build the carbon absorbing barriers around where the stuff is done, then that's less in the air, and they had to pay to convert the lawns to those mushrooms that would remediate the soil and then remediate it so they're edible, which then makes that now a crop. And then local restaurants can buy their mushrooms from these neighborhoods, which then gives immediate upward mobility. And it, you know what I'm saying? And especially then those communities are impoverished and they're likely on governmental assistance. If you gave them that additional income without cutting the governmental assistance with that improved quality of life, chances are they might have better boots to pull themselves up by.
Seems like you might have thought about this for just a second.
For 4 years now.
Okay, you had a good game plan there.
I have lots of them.
Look, I apologize. Go ahead, you go ahead, pat yourself there. I'll pat you too. I apologize, but I have to get off soon. I've got some family where I need to help with some homework. I've been doing that, most of my day along with work. But I agree with you, Alexis. There's definite things that can be done, and we need to be able to hold some of these companies to a different responsibility because, let's face it, they have the money to make changes right now that could affect, different communities. And then, like you said, that same community, where, people are more susceptible to asthma. Now imagine if you're a child living in that environment with a family that smokes, plenty of cigarettes, all day, every day. Now you have
roaches and smokes plenty of cigarettes. Right.
And so you have more and more and more things that are going against you, because and a lot of times in some of those households, you got kids that are, worried about eating plenty, more so than worried about, doing schoolwork. Or if they are going to school and they're trying to do schoolwork, they're coming home to parents, who may not, understand how to teach, or how to help them work through algebra. And that's why it's important that we try and do something, and flip this, because some of that money that, Alexis was talking about going towards a noble cause could go towards, free tutors that go around in the district to help out, kids or have a meeting spot in a neighborhood to where, okay, if you have a need for, tutoring in any subject, meet here in this neighborhood, on Monday nights at 7. And then that way, we'll have 20 people available to you walking around, helping kids do their homework and learning. Those are the type of things and activities that people need so that they can improve their life and get better, because that's what's gonna get them, like was said earlier, and I forgot exactly who, but it's more towards that upward mobility so that they at least have a better chance. Because like I said, we're not saying we're going to take a person and take them from, a parent that is barely getting by to a doctor, to an MD. That rarely ever happens, but, not saying it can't happen, but you can take someone, whose parents just barely got by and just lived, and then give them an education of some kind where they can get to a point where they're making, decent money, where they're, in the middle class, where they're able to take care of the kids. I know that to be the truth because I am living that. So we just have to put programs together to help kids out so that they realize and actually tell them that they have hope. Because if a kid doesn't believe that they have hope, then they're not going to believe anything that you're trying to tell them. So that's one thing. People give up because they can't see the surface of the water. They're drowning and they can't see the surface of the water, and so they stop swimming. And that's a lot of times what happens. And so we've got to be that light that shines through the water so they can see it. And then that way we get them to swim up towards the surface, and then they're at level ground or sea level. So thanks for letting me rant and talk. I got to run. I do want to say that I'm wearing a Silverback Academy shirt. That is a youth wrestling club here in Metro Detroit area. It's really based out of Highland Park, and it serves kids and the youth in Highland Park and Detroit. And recently they were thrown out of their league because the organization said that one of the parents had threatened to shoot a referee, which, the organization has denied that and said that is absolutely not the case. And I'm currently looking for a civil lawyer because I, want to help them out. Both my kids wrestled there. We did not, wrestle this year, and we just kind of took the year off because of the pandemic. I had a lot of obligations, had to work, so I could not be a part of that. But I'm looking for a civil lawyer. So if anyone knows of a good civil lawyer that is willing to take this case on pro bono, or, if we need to find some funding, I'm looking for that, because there's no way that the kids should suffer for that. Thank you for letting me say that. And you all have a great evening.
I got someone for you, Phil.
Vince,
I'll send them your way.
We'll be in contact soon. Thank you.
And they accused them with that and never furnished proof, never did any kind of investigation. They just banned the team from the league based on their feelings. And
a referee later came out, a different referee came out and said that it wasn't a part of that organization. However, nothing has changed. So absolutely.
So, yeah, that's even more. And so that is a thing where the comfort, and here's the thing, this organization has been dominating, and they have been having to have racist incidents and face those. And because they've been being successful in spite of, they were on their way to a championship, and then they were kicked out of the league, and they won't let them back in. So this is also holding back. And what that does is hold back scholarship opportunities. And so scholarship opportunities where that would be a life-changing thing for these children and their futures. So don't see this as a small thing not to get behind. This would be one of those resilience factors in those moments to create actual change. Otherwise, those are further children being ate up by the system of systemic oppression, because the system gives these teams and these organizations power to do things like this based on their feelings without proof, where that wouldn't be the case otherwise. And frankly, that's without proof is just a bad way of doing it. But it gives them the power to do that with impunity.
Thank you. And I appreciate you further clarifying it, because you did a much more eloquent of a job than I did. So thank you. Again, it was a great conversation. Dean, Amber, very nice meeting you. And good conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Hi, brother.
So where are we at now? We talked about a lot of stuff.
The revolution can be peaceful because it can be an evolution.
Well,
of where we are.
yeah, I think we answered that question. I mean, I believe it. I have the same. Part of me wants to call myself a realist. So, and that's where the militant aspect comes from. But I don't think it's right to start with that. You're bringing a negative, and it's not intention, but your negative energy signature into what might not have to be a fight if you present the proper picture, right? So, so I like everything that we talked about, and it really is it. Rather than arguing with people, present it. This is what it could be. This is what it could be. Not everyone's going to be there, and that's what these things are. They're not for everyone.
They don't
You know, but-
have to be if we get the talent to be there. The people with talent and influence, if we get them to be there, everybody doesn't have to be there. They will eventually be there.
No, well, no. It's usually. I mean, when these things happen and they're successful, even somewhat, it's a collective few came together.
Because it
and,
became popular and people be wanting something to stand behind when they feel like they being attacked from all fronts.
mhm.
Give them a hero, Vince. Give them a hero.
Why- I'm gonna-
Entertainment is extremely powerful, and if we're talking about a generational change, which is really what is needed, like it's there may be those short-term wins like you were talking about, Vince, but like there's really the longer term, that shared future that we need to be looking at and painting that picture, and empowering young people to realize that they have more choices than they might see in front of them. But how do they see them, and how do they even discern between them? What does that look like?
We're talking about collectively breaking a cycle.
Mhm.
So if you're a person who is spiritually awake or considers yourself to be a participant of conscious evolution, if you're not actively embodying the solution to the problems you see, my question to you is, are you actively participating in conscious evolution for society?
So you'd have to be.
Well, and I guess participation is it's a broad scale, right? So I mean, like, education is just an investment of time and sharing what you have, right? And I think there's this binary method of there's only a transfer of resources, right? And I think we talked a lot about dollars, but I think there's a lot more than the dollars. It's time, it's sharing your education, it's just listening and helping in a lot of ways. And I think there's small heroes in the mix of everyone that's out in the change, right? And I think in some ways maybe that's the highlight reel that needs to be played, not the tragic heroes or any of the extremes. It's just trying to show that you can just be ordinary and make a real difference. And I think that difference comes by enlightenment, because then they have the power to make a change. Because there's this really bizarre notion like we arrive, and I actually don't think we ever arrive. I think evolution is an indefinite game. And this notion that we got there is a fallacy, right? And I think that's part of the, like, we keep swimming for the surface. And I was like, you know what? There ain't no surface. you just keep swimming. And I mean, like, you hope it gets a little easier, but I mean, some days that's just not the waves you catch. And with having a community, that's where you get the real power and force to conquer those types of waves. I mean, that's philosophical, I guess. At the heart of it is a reoccurring theme of a lot of our conversation was education. And I guess maybe it's just speaking up, maybe it's just not asking if you're happy. Again, a binary structure. Are you happy? Yes or no, right? It is like, how could we be happy? And why aren't you happy? Maybe those are better questions to getting at what's real.
Do you want a better future?
Yes.
Is that's the equivalent, that's the effective happiness.
You have to think about it.
So do you want a better future? Everybody wants a better future. Well, let me talk to you about how we can get one.
Right.
I think helping people to paint a picture of what that actually would look like for themselves, invoking the imagination, is a huge short and long-term win.
Right, because that's where we start to expose the gray, right? We fixate on the like you're rich and then you made it, and that's not really how it is. And I think we keep evolving our thoughts, and if you can help people accelerate how they think and reach that critical place where they can make their own judgment calls, then you're releasing someone to help the rest, right? And then that's the sticky momentum that I hope for personally.
And that's exactly what the trickle down effect of this, because I just latched on to something that most can agree on in terms of what greed does to the system, and so we can get behind that and through that form a community. And the trickle down effect is these types of meetings happen in every community while we're trying to get to this 33 million. I think at a certain point it becomes about the journey. Now everybody's educating each other, and we're building this community. Unbeknownst to some people, it's just building because now we're in this thing together. And by the time we get there, we might not need it. You know what I mean? We may have created something so beautiful that it overpowers what's already out there. So like, I don't want to say it's manipulative in my thinking, but it was like, how can we get everybody together, meeting like this in a collective way? I could say that. But then I think the trickle down effect is we create our own community, not the one they laid out for us. The one we know is bullshit. We create our own communities, and we get compassionate because we're talking to people at a very deep, visceral level, and that's not allowed for in the 9-to-5 life. This is not. It's not what that's not the world that was painted for us. That's my hope anyway. If we can get people behind it. But there's other ways, I guess. I mean, there are other ways. It's just it's so fragmented, you know.
So what if you thought about, so you know the goal you want to achieve now. Now, what if you were to start to shift your thinking into how do you develop the campaign to get people to begin to shift, and then think about how you get people to agree with you, not feel like you.
Yes, right. That's what this was tonight. Like, I wanted to talk to everybody here and hear these things, because I think the more we talk about it, the more we start to flesh things out in our heads. And people are watching this, and there's people watching it who don't like what we're saying. But there's some people watching it that don't like what we're saying, but kind of get what we're saying.
But they wouldn't have to participate. That's the cool thing about the voluntary aspect of it. So the people who disagree, let them disagree, as long as we like are prepared for that violent propensity of disagreement. But if you soothe that, like, hey, we just over here doing this, you don't have to participate, it doesn't take away from you, then we won't stoke the trigger for violence. But then we just build it, and once you build it, they will come.
But the kicker is we're doing it in public in a way that's never, so people get to watch. People get to watch, and if
the public unifies.
Right. So
without pushing, if you study those processes for what makes people unify, that'll help steer the direction of your campaign's messaging.
I've never seen anything
what
more
you feel
unifying.
like, Vince. I know you're right a lot, but I'm telling you, there's a process to do what you want to do.
Oh yeah, and
begin to apply that process to your goal, because you are going off of feeling an instinct for your vision, and that works a lot.
Absolutely.
But then you gotta like apply a process with it, and it is a process to get people behind stuff.
Yeah.
Success leaves markers because people have unified before. So like you figure out how they have unified before, and you apply those best practices to your movement and the messaging around your movement, because your goal is in alignment with a shared future. It's in alignment with betterment for all. You know that. You got to figure out how to get other people to know that.
Well, and other people who know how to communicate that, because that's not my strong point. You know,
you got to learn how to think about, but here's the thing, you got to learn how to talk about it in a way that when you're talking about it, you sound fully impassioned and fully secure around it. And you're not quite there yet, because when you talk about it, you talk about the opposition and your belief.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, stop talking about the opposition.
I'm talking about the opposition.
Ask you questions. And when the opposition asks you questions, you give them a logical, rational response that steers them in your direction.
Yeah, no, I was watching a lot of Louis Farrakhan actually, and the way he would handle some of those questions in certain circumstances. I'm like, man, he was yeah, that guy. He was smooth. The way he would move on his feet in some of those situations, he was nothing what he was portrayed. Because when I was a kid, oh, Farrakhan's racist. That's all you ever heard. But when I would watch him, I'm like, man, that guy's smooth as hell. Like the way, and you know what they're saying to him. You know what they're saying to him and how
You know,
they're
both of them, well, not with the definition of racism, but you know, both of them could be true, right? He can
What's
be
that?
smooth as hell and incredibly prejudiced.
Well, yeah. No, you can't. Yeah. I'm just saying that to watch him move on his feet like that was that's a skill. That's a skill set, and being able to do it now, not being incredibly prejudiced and taking that out there. You know, when your intent is good, but you only know one way, and then merging it with people who can soften that. That's the thing. That's the thing. Like, and that's the thing we haven't been able to accomplish because it gets so fragmented when we can't be collective with it. You know, and what the internet has created is an environment where we get to be collective. We can have these conversations, and at the end of it, I walk out feeling differently. You know,
I got a
Yes.
question.
yeah.
What inspires you?
To what? That for this?
Period. What inspires
just-
you?
I know I don't want anyone to ever have to go what I went through. I have to go through what I went through. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not that I feel a responsibility. I can't see myself not if I think I have an opportunity to there's a way that there's an audience that I speak to, and there's a
You're
way
telling me your why.
my why.
You're telling me your why, and you're telling me your methodology. But what I asked you is what inspires you. Now, answer that I hope close to that was other people not having to go through what you went through.
Yeah, I know my why. What clicked it? What pushed it into action?
No, I don't want to know your why. I want to know what inspired your why.
No, that's what I'm saying. That you want to know what inspired, what pushed my why into action? Because I've had this why since I was a kid. What pushed it into action? What inspired it? I don't know. I'll have to think about that because I don't know what was the thing that I can't really say.
Valuable data in the knowing of that.
The
Because
inspiration.
that'll get you in where there's a disconnect is if you're not in touch with what inspires you, it's difficult to feel the resonance when someone else is inspired because you haven't been existing in that state. And if you can't feel what that feeling, there are social emotional cues you might miss when talking about it that would help steer your conversation. And so it's like remember when you were talking about, we talked in another discussion where you were like, there was an emotion you couldn't get because you hadn't had the experience yet.
Right.
And so you couldn't act it out because you didn't know how to embody it.
Yeah.
So that same principle applies here with the being inspired or being inspirational. If you don't know the resonance of that feeling, it's difficult to attune to that when you're in conversation around your topic.
There's a vulnerability there that I now I'm getting closer to where it is. There's a vulnerability there that I can explore, and now I'm gonna have to because you just brought it to my attention. But it's there, and I'm close to it. It's just something that I haven't made part of my public persona per se because it exposes. But I also know that's very much a part of what we're trying to create when we're talking about a nonviolent revolution or evolution. Well, if we're going to evolve, we got to do all these things we were programmed opposite of, and that's hiding feelings, hiding emotions, lifting ourselves up by our bootstraps and all that. Like it's different than oppositional. It's more standing in truth and moving in that direction. So now I got to think about this shit. So I'm going to do that. But
yay! Last time you left knowing feminine energy was dope. Now you're going to leave figuring out what inspires you.
Yeah. That's why we're here. You know, I keep coming back because there's something. I gain something every time. If I'm out here on my own devices, I'll accomplish some shit, but I don't know if it's what I want. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's good for us. I mean, it'll be the little small wins that piss people off and create more opposition. That's all we've been doing. That's all human society's been doing, is just we haven't learned to compromise, or we haven't learned to find the win-win. You know what I mean? Like
I was just going to say something about that, Vince, because I really agree with what you were saying, Alexis, and I think you're not there yet, Vince, with what she was talking about, but you're already facing that. You're already pointed in that direction. You've been talking about this already in terms of realizing it's not fight the fight, it's win the win.
Yeah.
Totally, just shift it where you're pointed at, and it's the same result, but you know.
Without the energy signature, the negative energy signature.
Winner, win, we all lose. There you
Yeah.
go. Exactly. It's not fight the fight, it's win the win.
And over here, there's heal yourself, heal the world. So win or we all lose. Heal yourself, heal the world. Share a future or bust.
So it's just you amplifying that thing that you've already tapped into.
And that's true, because I've done so much work on myself that there's something in me said, well, now you've done that work, so come back out and be militant with the work that you've done, and you know what I mean, switch it up, and because that's what people understand. I think it's something that was natural. It's not anything I planned, but the fact that you
of ego death.
Oh no, it's ego. Yeah, I mean,
No, what I'm saying, so like how you have that. This is what I take people through. So you have like, oh, I've done a lot of work on me. That's a stage. Then it's like, but wait a minute, I see that after I've done work on me, things in society, hold on, I can do something about those. If only people in society would know that they could do the work on them, then society would be better. So then you start trying to figure out how to relate to people in society. Then that kind of triggers some of the old stuff, because now it takes you back, but it's back, but it's like back higher on the spiral. So it's like, yes, the same position in time, but you're on the next rung up of the evolution, and if you were to look at it that way. And so then it's like, oh, so how do I get collective action to happen? And that is through inspiration. But the only way you can be inspirational is to go back through all the same processes that you did to heal yourself and apply those in mass, which means you can't be afraid, and you got to convince others to be not afraid, which means you can't operate from where? The ego, even though the ego says, I got to be relatable to them, if they got to like me in order to get behind my cause.
So much quicker.
True, because as soon as you started being your authentic self, you started aligning with people who are more like value to you. And guess what? They like the things you like, and then you have proximity friendships. And then through those proximity friendships, you get to evaluate and have deeper, more intimate friendships. And then through those deeper, more intimate friendships, you get to have romantic relationships. There are so many levels to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to echo one other thing. We don't arrive. It's an evergreen work in progress.
Death is when we arrive to the end of doing the work.
What's that?
Death is when we arrive to the end of doing the work.
Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of
begin to work as an ancestor.
Right. And I was like, even then I'm fertilizing the ground. I mean, like it just keeps going. Like I mean, we're a blip of consciousness, and in a way, like even when we're right, it can be wrong tomorrow, right? And so, I mean, just that willingness to take it where we're at today and do the best we can today for ourselves and those around us, and you really hope that energy will swell. I mean, yeah, I guess that to bring it full circle, the revolution is I think we just handshake versus sword fight, right? Just start there and then see where we're at, and then we move it forward, and it may not be tomorrow. And I think there's just a sense of urgency because people's needs aren't met. I think that's the critical call is how do we mobilize as fast as we can to identify those in true need, not want, true need, and serve those individuals. And then we start to raise the tide together. But right now there are people drowning, and there are people who are floating. And so I think that's the critical call that is really at the heart of why everyone's here is we want to help those to like now.
And exercising that compassion is a superpower. That's powerful. That's more powerful than anything else that happens on this planet. Is that right there?
Mhm.
Well, so it can happen. We answered the question. We answered the question. What time? Oh, 9. I appreciate you guys coming on. I don't know how it wound up a psych session for me, but I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna run with it, and I got a feeling we'll be back here again a little further along in whatever the agenda winds up being. But I know this right here. This is the stuff. Like when people get to watch this, somebody that may have been defensive about anything we were saying, when they see it get to this point, that's why I like watching these long form conversations, because I might not agree, but I see how they got there. And then you start to see people, they're not fighting over what their points are. They're kind of softening into each other's perspectives, and they leave being human. And I think that more than anything we need right now is we're all human. And that's where that compassion comes in. We're all human. There's people drowning. So let's pick them up. Because that will empower everybody. Like you said, when somebody gets empowered, it doesn't mean it takes away from us. We got to get out of that lack and limitation mindset, and I think we are, and I think we're moving in the right direction. And I know there's a lot of us around the globe right now. How do we connect us is the thing.
Well,
We'll figure it out.
I think it just starts with one single conversation, and we just keep building. And then all those people that are in your feed are another opportunity, man. I mean,
yeah.
and I was like, can we have individual conversation with all those people? Because I'd like to evolve my mindset, because they may know something I don't know, and
That's an
hopefully
invite.
I might be able to share some. So yeah, I mean, I think we have a platform, and we have many platforms actually. That's part of the fragmentation. And so, but I think really the ideas and still stay true to everyone's soul. So like, we'll start to pair up, and I think that's how we get out of it together. But it's been an honor to and a blessing to be with you guys. So thank you for having me.
Same. I appreciate it, everybody. You heard Dean. That's an open invite, so you'll see him. I mean, let's keep the conversation going. And
if you want to book a consultation with me, you can book on my website at www.askalexis111.com. That's www.askalexis111.com. That's all right. I'm gonna make me a Zoom background with it, and I'll just switch to that one.
the link.
And I can make it a QR code, and people could just scan their screen. There we go. But until then, you can go there to that website and you can book a free session with me. I do one-on-one personal transformation coaching. I also consult for small businesses who want to become actively anti-racist small businesses and establish that in their culture. If you have a spiritual community and you want to understand how your spiritual community can get together to manifest some social equity, I consult in that way. If you have a question and you happen to be a person who is racialized as white and you want to gain some understanding, you can book the 30-minute consultation, and then I have a different paid link for that. But you can pay to just get the educated perspective, because I'm an active anti-Black racism educator that has the lived experience to go along with it. And my methodology is not to blame and shame, that is only to reveal in order to heal, so you can gain understanding. Because I can't change your values, only you can do that. But I can help you understand what happened and how to make educated and instinctual guesses about race in a racialized society.
And on that note,
Well,
I appreciate
Evelyn,
it.
give her plug.
Me?
Everybody give her plug. She Lady Cosmo Shine.
Yeah, that's
She's
right.
Lady Cosmo Shine.
I'm Lady Cosmo Shine. Find me on Instagram. That's as much of a plug as I'm going to give today.
That's perfect. That's perfect. Find her on Instagram. All right. Thank you everybody for coming tonight. Keep the questions coming, comments. I live off them. And apparently these guys will too. So, all right. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Bye.